Chim Chim, you three vine swingers should feel right at home. I'll be there when the white man don't need me no more.
See, when people ask me, have I made BET a success, I say no. It's time to redefine success, because once you embrace failure, you can't go anywhere else but up.
This it? This is what I got all those apples for? I had a dream once. It was a dream that little black boys and little black girls would drink from the river of prosperity.
The dark hidden message that got the Boondocks canceled for good had nothing to do with the jokes or the violence.
I asked Jesus, will you co-write with me? And he said yes. And I told Jesus, I want to write plays for women. What do women want to see? And Jesus said, sexy men.
While other shows played it safe, the Boondocks exposed internalized racism, media manipulation, and the prison industrial complex. Truths that made powerful people very uncomfortable.
The only way we're gonna get our freedom is to take it.
How we supposed to do that?
But
the animated series that became too dangerous for television would pay the ultimate price for speaking truth to power. So let's get into it. Huey Freeman wasn't just another cartoon character. Named after Black Panther Party co-founder Huey P. Newton, he embodied revolutionary consciousness and radical political thought in a world that wanted him to shut up and assimilate. Every episode, Huey challenged the complacency and ignorance of modern society, asking questions nobody wanted to answer.
everything we see is a false reality. Obi-Wan Kenobi said, "Your eyes can deceive you. Don't trust them." It seems to be getting harder, distinguishing reality from the illusions people make for us, or from the ones we make for ourselves.
Creator Aaron Magruder designed Huey as the show's moral center, the character who sees through the lies and refuses to participate in the performance. While his brother Riley chased materialistic dreams, and his grandfather Robert tried fitting into suburban white America, Huey stood firm in his revolutionary ideals, even when it made him an outcast. Lots of fans think that Huey represented everything the mainstream media fears: a young black male who reads, questions authority, understands systemic oppression, and refuses to be pacified by entertainment or consumerism. His afro wasn't just a hairstyle, it was a political statement, a callback to the Black Power movement that terrified white America in the 1970s.
The only way we're gonna get our freedom is to take it.
How we supposed to do that?
But
Throughout the series, Huey predicted events with eerie accuracy. He warned about government surveillance, corporate manipulation, and the dumbing down of black culture years before these issues became mainstream conversations. The show made Huey almost prophetic, understanding patterns others refused to see. But Huey's biggest crime wasn't being radical, it was being right. Episode after episode, his warnings proved accurate. The corporations he criticized did exploit communities. The celebrities he called out were eventually exposed. The systems he challenged did operate exactly how he described. The internet went crazy saying Huey was Magruder's way of speaking truth while hiding behind animation. The character represented everything corporate America wanted to suppress: critical thinking, historical awareness, and revolutionary consciousness. While networks profited from shows promoting materialism and ignorance, the Boondocks offered Huey as an antidote, a character who refused to be bought, manipulated, or silenced. That made him dangerous. That made the show a target. Uncle Ruckus is perhaps the most uncomfortable character in television history. A self-hating black man who worships whiteness and despises his own race, Ruckus served as brutal satire of internalized racism taken to its most absurd extreme. But many viewers miss the point entirely, and that was part of the problem.
Don't trust them new niggas over there.
Magruder created Ruckus to expose how internalized racism manifests in black communities. Ruckus genuinely believes he's white, blames black people for all societal problems, and idolizes white supremacist ideology while being visibly black himself. The character was meant to be so extreme that viewers would recognize the absurdity, and then recognize smaller versions of that thinking in their own communities. But instead of recognizing him as satirical critique, some viewers treated him as validation for their own racist beliefs. They quoted Ruckus unironically, shared his worst moments without context, and used him to justify stereotypes the show was trying to dismantle.
He was white.
Well, hell, that's all you had to say. A white doctor is 99.9% reliable. Black doctor is an oxymoron, unless it's a witch doctor.
For Black audiences, Ruckus was painful recognition of real people they'd encountered, the ones who police other Black people's behavior, who blame the community for systemic oppression, who perform anti-Blackness for white approval. Magruder wasn't inventing this character. He was exposing a reality that many wanted to ignore. The complexity of Ruckus made him controversial from every angle. Civil rights organizations criticized the character as perpetuating harmful stereotypes. White supremacists misappropriated him as supposed proof of their beliefs. And the show's target audience was forced to confront uncomfortable truths about how racism operates internally, not just externally.
Well, Chim Chim, you three vine swingers should feel right at home. I'll be there when the white man don't need me no more.
Some conspiracy theories reveal that network executives became increasingly uncomfortable with Ruckus as the show progressed. His episodes generated complaints from all sides, those who found him offensive and those who found him too accurate. A character designed to expose internalized racism became too effective at his job, forcing conversations American television wasn't ready to have. The episode that dared to imagine Martin Luther King Jr. surviving his assassination and waking up in the 2000s, America was the Boondocks at its most audacious and controversial. Return of the King didn't just push boundaries, it obliterated them, asking questions about civil rights legacy that made everyone uncomfortable. In Magruder's vision, King awakens from a coma to find Black culture dominated by materialism, violence, and the very degradation he fought against. The episode climaxes with King delivering a speech where he uses the N-word repeatedly, expressing deep disappointment with how his dream was corrupted. The speech is devastating, a complete rejection of modern Black culture through the voice of its greatest hero. Even though nothing is proven, all evidence suggests this episode generated more controversy than any other in the series. Some viewers praised it as necessary critique of cultural decline. Others condemned it as disrespectful to King's legacy and offensive to everything he represented. The NAACP and other civil rights organizations criticized the episode, arguing it misrepresented King's philosophy and weaponized his image.
This it? This is what I got all those ass whoopings for? I had a dream once. It was a dream that little black boys and little black girls would drink from the river of prosperity.
But Magruder's point was precisely to make people uncomfortable. The episode asked if Martin Luther King Jr. could see what his dream became, the commercialization of his legacy, the commodification of Black identity, the violence and materialism. Would he recognize it as progress? Would he be satisfied with rainbow capitalism and Black faces in high places while systemic oppression continued? The episode suggested King would be horrified, that his dream was stolen and sold back as entertainment, that the revolution was televised, merchandised, and neutralized, that his image now sells everything from cars to burgers, while the conditions he fought against persist in different forms. Lots of fans think Return of the King was the moment networks realized the Boondocks was too dangerous. You can satirize celebrities, mock politicians, even critique racism, but questioning the civil rights legacy itself, suggesting the dream was corrupted, that crossed the final line corporate America would tolerate. No target received more brutal, sustained criticism from the Boondocks than BET. Episode after episode, Magruder's show attacked the network for perpetuating negative stereotypes, promoting shallow content, and essentially serving as propaganda that kept Black communities distracted and disempowered. The show's critique reached its peak in the Uncle Ruckus reality show, which parodied BET executives Reggie Hudlin and Deborah L. Lee as characters named Wedgie Rudlin and Deborah Leavell. The episode depicted them as soulless executives willing to broadcast any degrading content for profit, including a reality show starring Uncle Ruckus himself. The episode wasn't subtle. It directly accused BET of destroying black culture for corporate profit, of providing programming that reinforced the worst stereotypes, and of failing the community it was supposed to serve. Magruder showed BET executives as villains, not incompetent, but deliberately harmful, consciously choosing degradation over elevation.
See, when people ask me, have I made BET a success, I say no. It's time to redefine success, because once you embrace failure, you can't go anywhere else but up.
The internet went crazy saying that BET executives were furious about their portrayal. The parody was so specific that everyone knew exactly who was being targeted. Wedgie Rudlin and Deborah Leavell weren't generic characters. They were named, designed, and characterized to directly mock real people with real power in black media. Some conspiracy theories reveal that BET's parent company, Viacom, pressured Cartoon Network about the content. While nothing was publicly confirmed, the increasingly aggressive critique of BET coincided with network interference in the Boondocks creative process. Magruder's ability to produce the show without executive meddling declined as the attacks on BET intensified.
What you see on television when you turn on CNN and you turn on MSNBC, that's entertainment. News is what people try to suppress. News is what they do not want you to know.
The BET critique mattered because it challenged the idea that black-owned or black-oriented media automatically serves black interests. Magruder argued that BET was worse than networks that ignored black audiences. At least those networks weren't actively undermining black culture while claiming to celebrate it. BET sold poison disguised as representation, making it more dangerous than honest indifference. This message threatened the entire structure of corporate black media, making the Boondocks dangerous not just to BET, but to every network profiting from packaged, commodified blackness. The episode featuring the Itis restaurant operated as perfect metaphor wrapped in comedy. A soul food restaurant that makes people so sleepy they can barely function. The Itis represented everything Magruder wanted to say about how systemic oppression keeps communities passive and controllable.
How long I wanted to own my own restaurant?
3 weeks at Sunday dinner. That was the first time you mentioned it.
On the surface, the episode is about Robert Freeman opening a restaurant serving heavy, delicious soul food that induces extreme drowsiness. Customers eat and immediately fall asleep. In their cars, at their jobs, in public spaces. The food is so good, they keep coming back despite the consequences. The business thrives while the community suffers. But lots of fans think the Itis was Magruder's commentary on how capitalism and consumerism work like drugs, providing temporary satisfaction while keeping people too sedated to recognize or resist their exploitation. The food represents everything sold to black communities as culture while actually functioning as oppression, entertainment, materialism, and distraction. The episode also critiques how black people participate in their own oppression. Robert knows his food is making people dysfunctional, but he's profiting, so he continues. The community knows they're being harmed, but the food tastes good, so they keep eating. Everyone is complicit in a system that hurts them because individual benefit outweighs collective good.
Demonstrates her love by feeding herself and her offspring enormous amounts of pig lard. Then, get this, Big Mama's arteries are so clogged, they gotta amputate her.
Even though nothing is proven, all evidence suggests the episode was addressing the larger phenomenon of community destruction for profit. Check caching places, liquor stores, fast food chains, businesses that extract wealth and health from communities while providing legal products people want. How do you fight systems people voluntarily participate in? The Itis episode challenged viewers to recognize their own participation in systems of oppression. It wasn't just about external forces keeping people down. It was about how easily people choose comfort over consciousness, pleasure over power, individual satisfaction over collective liberation. This message was dangerous because it asked people to examine their complicity and make uncomfortable changes. Networks want audiences comfortable, consuming, and uncritical. The Itis revealed how that works and why it persists despite everyone knowing better. The Boondocks became notorious for its brutal parodies of black celebrities and public figures. Tyler Perry, R. Kelly, and Diddy all received devastating satirical treatment that exposed uncomfortable truths about power, exploitation, and accountability in black entertainment.
I asked Jesus, will you co-write with me? And he said yes. And I told Jesus, I want to write plays for women. What do women want to see? And Jesus said, sexy men.
The Tyler Perry parody might have been the most controversial. In the episode Pause, the character Winston Jerome is a cross-dressing filmmaker whose movies feature broad stereotypes and questionable messages. The parody was so specific and so cutting that Tyler Perry reportedly threatened to reconsider his relationship with Turner Broadcasting after it aired. Lots of fans think Magruder wasn't just mocking Perry's Medea character. He was critiquing the entire enterprise. Perry built an empire on content many argued reinforced negative stereotypes while claiming to celebrate black culture. The Boondocks asked whether representation matters, if that representation is degrading, and whether black creators get a pass for content that would be condemned if created by white producers.
Needs to be said is this.
The R. Kelly episode was even more direct. During a time when Kelly's legal troubles were being dismissed or ignored by much of black media, the Boondocks created an episode explicitly calling out his behavior and the community's complicity in protecting him. The show was inspired by Magruder's ex-wife's reaction to the real-life situation, her outrage that people kept supporting Kelly despite clear evidence of wrongdoing. The Diddy parody in The S-Word satirized his public persona and business practices, but it's not confirmed, but all evidence points towards the episode specifically criticizing how Diddy built his empire, allegedly through exploitation, manipulation, and taking credit for others' work while maintaining a carefully crafted public image. These parodies were dangerous because they challenged the protection that successful black public figures typically receive from black media. Magruder argued that critique and accountability matter more than solidarity with powerful people who might be harming the community. The internet went crazy, saying these episodes generated threats and pressure from the subjects themselves and their supporters, making Magruder and his team targets for exposing uncomfortable truths about black elite exploitation. The Boondocks didn't just satirize general types, it created specific parodies of real people that were so accurate, so devastating, that subjects couldn't deny they were being targeted. From Chris Brown to Latarian Milton, the show held up a mirror that people refused to look into. In The Fried Chicken Flu, the character Pretty Boy Flizzy was clearly Chris Brown, a troubled R&B singer with legal problems mirroring real-life events. The parody came after Brown's assault case, depicting him as violent, immature, and enabled by an industry that prioritized his talent over his victims.
The robbery. You just couldn't leave shit alone, could you? What else was fake? Were the Nicaraguan guns fake? Did you really even...
The episode aired when much of entertainment media was still defending Brown, making the Boondocks' critique particularly bold. The Latarian Milton parody in Smokin' with Cigarettes might have been the show's darkest comedy. The character LaMilton Tishon was based on a 7-year-old who gained notoriety for stealing his grandmother's SUV and later assaulting her. The episode used this real child story for satire about failed parenting, community dysfunction, and cycles of violence.
Yes,
Why are you here?
'Cause I'm a bad kid. I do bad.
Some conspiracy theories reveal that using a real miner's story for satire crossed legal and ethical lines that made network executives extremely nervous. While technically legal as parody, the episode generated complaints from child advocacy groups and questions about whether anything was too sensitive for the Boondocks' brutal comedy. The BET executives' parody in the Uncle Ruckus reality show was personal and specific. Wedgie Rudlin and Deborah Leavell weren't just generic characters. They were designed to look like, sound like, and act like real executives who had power over black media. The episode accused them of consciously destroying black culture for profit. Even though nothing is proven, all evidence suggests these specific, named parodies generated legal threats and corporate pressure that made continuing the show increasingly difficult. You can satirize general types, but when you name names, show faces, and make specific accusations, even through comedy, you make powerful enemies who have resources to shut you down through various channels. A Date with the Booty Warrior was The Boondocks at its most uncomfortable. Based on Fleece Johnson, a real prisoner who appeared in the Lockup documentary series, the episode used dark comedy to expose the brutal reality of America's prison system and its disproportionate impact on black communities.
Prison, the most important thing in your life is going to be booty.
Better listen to
A man's butt. Booty, getting some booty, is more important than eating.
Fleece Johnson became infamous for his interview statement about prioritizing assault over food in prison. The Boondocks took this real person and created a character that was simultaneously comedic and horrifying. A predator who represented the dehumanization and violence endemic to America's prison system. The episode featured the Booty Warrior targeting Tom DuBois and even Chris Hansen from To Catch a Predator, creating layers of satire about justice, hypocrisy, and institutional violence. But beneath the comedy was devastating critique of how America treats prisoners, particularly black men, as less than human. Lots of fans think this episode was Magruder's way of forcing conversations about prison conditions that America wants to ignore. The prison industrial complex generates billions in profit by warehousing human beings in conditions that breed violence, trauma, and recidivism. Black men are disproportionately targeted, sentenced, and subjected to this system. By using a real person and real quotes, the episode challenged viewers to confront actual conditions rather than abstract statistics. This wasn't theoretical. This was a real man in a real prison describing real violence that happens daily in American prisons. The comedy made it digestible, but the reality was indigestible. The internet went crazy saying the episode was offensive to victims and made light of serious violence. But Magruder's point was that America already makes light of prison violence through movies, jokes, and casual acceptance that prisoners deserve whatever happens to them. The Boondocks forced viewers to acknowledge what they usually ignore. The episode also critiqued the school-to-prison pipeline by showing a scared straight program that traumatizes children rather than educates them. The system doesn't prevent crime. It manufactures criminals and then profits from their incarceration. Jazmine DuBois represented the show's most nuanced character study. A biracial girl struggling with identity in a society that demands she choose sides. Her storyline critiqued how America handles race for those who don't fit neat categories, exposing the violence of forced classification. Throughout the series, Jazmine tries desperately to be black enough or white enough, depending on context, never feeling fully accepted anywhere. Her white mother and black father represent a post-racial ideal that doesn't actually exist. Their interracial marriage doesn't erase racism or solve identity complexity. It just relocates the struggle to their daughter. Some conspiracy theories reveal that Jazmine's storyline was deliberately uncomfortable because Magruder wanted to expose how even progressive families can't escape America's racial hierarchy. Her parents mean well but can't protect her from a society that sees her as a problem to be solved rather than a person to be accepted. The Wuncler family represented everything wrong with American power structures. Ed Wuncler, Barston III, are white men who own most of the town, exploit its residents, and face no consequences. They represent how wealth and whiteness operate above the law while claiming to be benefactors of the community they're destroying. The Wunklers engage in obvious corruption, theft, and violence, but their power protects them completely. They represent the 1% who extract wealth from communities while convincing those communities to be grateful for jobs and investment that mostly benefit the extractors. Magruder showed how systemic exploitation works, not through individual evil, but through structures that reward extraction and punish resistance. Even though nothing is proven, all evidence suggests the Wuncler storyline was Magruder's critique of how capitalism and white supremacy intersect. It wasn't about individual racism. It was about power structures that make racism profitable and inevitable. Lots of fans think these characters, Jazmine struggling with identity and the Wunklers wielding corrupt power, represented the core of Magruder's message. Identity is weaponized to divide communities that should unite against power structures benefiting from that division. The Boondocks officially ended after 4 seasons, but the real story is more complicated than simple cancellation. The show became too dangerous, too controversial, and too effective at exposing truths that networks, advertisers, and powerful figures wanted buried. By season 4, Magruder had significantly reduced involvement due to creative differences with Sony Pictures Television. The final season aired without his active participation, and many fans noticed the decline in quality and edge. It's not confirmed, but all evidence points towards network interference becoming so severe that Magruder couldn't produce the show he envisioned.
The show is really hard to make. It's really fun. I mean, it takes us 2 years and we're working around the clock, literally, sun up to sundown. We're always, we don't have any social life. So I know there was some concern about my bandwidth.
The specific controversies, Tyler Perry's threats, BET's fury over executive parodies, complaints about the MLK episode, criticism of celebrity parodies, accumulated into corporate pressure that made the show untenable. When you make enemies of that many powerful people, eventually they find ways to shut you down. Some conspiracy theories reveal that the Boondocks was never truly canceled. It was slowly strangled through restrictions, interference, and pressure that made production impossible. Magruder couldn't get approval for content that made the show meaningful, so he walked away rather than produce a neutered version. The internet went crazy saying the show's cancellation proved its message was correct. A show that critiqued how power operates in America was shut down by power operating in America. Networks that profit from keeping audiences distracted and divided couldn't tolerate a show that woke people up and united them against systemic oppression. The legacy of the Boondocks is complicated. It exposed uncomfortable truths about racism, exploitation, and complicity. It challenged both white supremacy and black conformity. It refused to choose between racial solidarity and accountability, insisting that critique and love aren't opposites, but necessities. The hidden message that got the Boondocks canceled wasn't any single episode or controversy. It was the cumulative effect of showing audiences how systems work, who benefits, and what resistance looks like. The show taught critical thinking, and that's the one thing power can never tolerate. Anyway, that's it for this video, folks. Thanks for watching.